Hey riders, it's Ryan Austin from Advanced Rider Training. We set up this little video tonight because I get asked a lot from people about what it is about Advanced Rider Training that's different than other programs. There's lots of motorcycle programs around the country, around the world, and when we look at different programs, Canada Safety Council across Canada does a spectacular job at new rider training. I know that whenever riders come to us and they've never ridden a motorcycle before, they're looking to start in a parking lot with a small CC bike and really kind of figure out how to get going on a bike, we would push them towards one of those types of programs. Canada Safety Council, West Side Academy down in Long Beach does a great job. And when you look at the difference between those programs and what Advanced Rider Training is, they're very different at their core. Advanced Rider Training is a program that's, in its name, is designed for advanced handling skills, advanced skills for riders. But when I say that, I also talk to people all the time and they say, well, what do I need? Do I need to have been riding for 20 years and do I need to have all this different experience? And what I tell riders is, what I need you to have is I need you to have your motorcycle license and the basics of sort of clutch, throttle control, and balance, and then we can take it from there. So the skills that you're going to get in one of those basic programs from the Safety Council, or whatever it is that's doing your basic training in your area, they'll give you the basic skills, and their job is obviously to just get you out on the road. A lot of those programs, if you have graduated licensing in your area, are going to do maybe your parking lot test that gets you from sort of stage 1 to stage 2, and they get you that bit of confidence to understand how to handle the bike. But in the name of that training, it's basic training, and it's designed to give you the basics and get you out there. And we all realize that in a basic rider course, there's only so much information that you can give to a rider during that period of time that they have you. You're learning all of this brand new information, and riders are sort of like a sponge, and if you just pour too much water on that sponge, it starts to just pour out the side. So you have to be careful about how much information you give them so that they're going to be able to absorb it and be able to use it as they get out there on the road. And this is kind of where Advanced Rider Training came into play. My experience over the years, I've been riding since I was little, all over the world, and came back into Canada, started riding on the road. When I became a police officer, I've been a police officer for about 25 years now, and I've been riding within the police department for a really long time. And I did that partly because I was, worked in Ontario, and I transferred out to British Columbia and then back again after a number of years. So moving departments allowed me to stay within the motorcycle units for a long time. And then I got my motorcycle instructor's certification through the police department, and I did that down in Southern California. And that did a couple of different things for me. It gave me the opportunity to learn how to train, and I was certified on multiple different platforms for police, so I can train police departments on BMW and Harley Davidson, Honda, Kawasaki, and Victory. And oftentimes where I worked, I would run multi-department police courses, and we'd have departments there. The one we did last year, we had BMWs there, we had Victories there, and we had some Harleys there. And then we had a number of civilian bikes there as well. So that gave a very unique perspective. A lot of police instructors are only certified or only train on one type of bike because that's all their department ever uses. So this gave me an opportunity to work on lots of different styles of bikes. The bigger part of that, though, was that I'm also an expert for collision reconstruction. I've done that for a really long time, and so basically, in layman's terms, I'm one of the guys they call out in the middle of the night for all those serious and fatal collisions. And it allowed me to look at the motorcycle world from a different perspective than just the one that you might see when you look at an instructor. And I found that I was looking at collisions, and I'm looking at them from the perspective of this sort of passionate civilian rider, from the police rider perspective, from the instructor perspective, and then from the collision reconstruction perspective, and trying to figure out why these crashes happened. What I realized about 15 years ago was I was noticing a real pattern of skills that were missing in civilian riders that were showing up in crashes over and over and over again. And then when I was evaluating our police operator certification courses, I also recognized that we were actually teaching those particular skills to our police riders. And I started to wonder, well, why are these skills being taught to police riders only and they're not being taught in the civilian world? And that's where I started to develop the Advanced Rider Training course. And it's all based around the Police Motorcycle Operators Certification course and the major crash work that I've done for 25 years. And putting those skills together, there are really key vital skills that are missing in civilian riders that just don't get taught in other types of training. One of the things that we look at when we look at basic training programs and where they've come from, many of them in their roots, is, and I tell this to riders on the courses, if you think back and you think, well, I'm going to go and take a motorcycle course from this person or this company, generally people are going to ask a few questions. What does this person have that I don't have that's worth me giving my money to take their course? And if the person's telling you, well, I go and I ride on the weekends every now and then with my significant other, you're probably thinking, yeah, so do I, and a lot more, so why would I pay you to train me? So generally riders that became instructors had to have some sort of pedigree behind them, some sort of resume or CV that would get people to say, yeah, that's actually something that's, looks like it's pretty advanced or pretty interesting. You have some real skills that you can pass on to me. And in the past, traditionally, that resume that came with those instructors was that they were semi-pro racer, pro racer, those types of things. And although those riders are incredibly skilled riders, unfortunately, a lot of the techniques that they use on the road or on the track have bled into their on-road training programs, and these have gone into even our basic rider programs, where very often riders are still being taught to lean with the bike, that knee down style that we're all familiar with when we go and we watch MotoGP or some type of motorcycle racing. That's what we see when we see those really cool posters. I've got one on my wall here, of the rider on that, 1000cc sport bike on the track. They're leaned way over and their knees down, their elbows down. It looks really cool. And we acknowledge that. Why do they do that? Well, they're trying to access that last little bit of speed and traction on the sort of the high end of the scale when they're on the track. What we remind our riders is that the problems with that is that works great on a track when the rider has walked the track. They know the track is clean. They're not worrying about dirt, deer, cars backing out of driveways, vehicles going the other way, all of these different things that track riders don't have to think about, but road riders do. And when you're fully committed in that style, it doesn't leave you any room for error. And on the road, we have to be prepared to be able to make changes because the circumstances change. You come around a corner and all of a sudden you realize there's a little bit of dirt and you need to change your track, you need to change your speed. A car is coming into your lane a little bit, or another car is drifting over and you need to move. If you're fully committed, leaned off the bike like that, it doesn't give you the ability to properly react, and all of a sudden something that shouldn't have been an emergency is now an emergency, and probably you're in a position where the same thing is going to happen to you that would have happened to that rider on the track if they were fully committed around the corner and a bike drifted over in front of them a little bit and they realized, I got to change my track here a little bit, I got to break some speed off halfway through the corner. Generally they crash and they slide off into the grass. But for them, life's not too hard, right? I mean, that's kind of what these tracks are designed for. They got their little bit of sand, they're into the grass, it's not too bad. Probably a whole bunch of people come over and lift the bike up and take them back to the paddock. That's a different world than it is on the track, on the road, where you slide over across the oncoming lane. You think, oh my gosh, I'm fortunate enough that I didn't get hit by a car, until you hit the curb and the post and things go really badly really quickly. And I'm out there getting called out at 1 o'clock in the morning to figure out what happened. The biggest thing that we saw was over and over and over again in crashes, seeing certain skills that were missing in riders, and things like target fixation, improper braking, improper body position, and just a real general lack of advanced control. And when we talk to riders that are out there, I get riders all the time that come and take our course that say, you know, wow, I've been riding for 25 years, I've been riding for 30 years. We had a guy the other day that was 60 years he'd been riding. It was his birthday when he came the first day of the course, and he was 60 years he'd been riding. He got his motorcycle license when he was 16 years old. Incredible. And when people have been riding that long and they take the course, and we as instructors, we see what their skills are like at the beginning of this advanced rider course when we start putting them into patterns that are basically testing their skills to control the bike under emergency conditions. And some of them start at low speed, where we're working on a completely different body position, where we teach riders, just like we teach the police riders, to sit upright and lean the bike over instead of leaning with the bike. The composite center of gravity changes completely on the bike and makes the bike far more stable. And it also gives you the ability to break through corners and see further through corners so that emergencies don't become emergencies, and it gives you more time to react. But when we see riders that have been riding for such a long time, and they get into these patterns at the beginning of the course, and we see how they struggle, what it's showing us very clearly is that it really doesn't matter how long riders have been riding for. Most of the riders out there don't have the skills that are necessary for when those big emergencies happen. And there's lots of riders that, you know, have been riding for 20 years and nothing's happened. And it's basically, it's a roll of the dice, and it's a roll of the dice every day is, hey, as long as nothing happens, then yeah, you're going to be okay. But when that big oh crap happens and that car swerves across, doesn't see you, like every motorcycle car crash that I've been to in 25 years, I've never had somebody in the car not say, yeah, I tell you, officer, I never even saw them. When that situation happens, those riders don't have the skill set to be able to control the bike, fight back those stress responses like target fixation, and be able to control the bike and get it where they need to go safely. Lots of times in crashes, we go there and we look at the scene and we say, well, based on the bike and the speed and the road and the conditions, this crash should never have happened. And it tells us that a lot of these crashes are 100% rider error, because most of the time when we look at it, even some of the ones that are really, really fast in terms of high speed, and it's easy to go to those crashes and say, you know, wow, this guy was going twice the speed limit, so wow, this whole crash is speed related. Except that when you look at the bike and the road and the conditions and everything, you realize, well, the bike actually could have made that maneuver without any problem at all, but the rider couldn't. And I find those really, really unfortunate when you look at crashes, that you realize that if the rider had had some advanced level skills, a couple of things would have happened. One, they wouldn't have been involved in that crash. We also find that riders tend to ride a little bit differently after the advanced training as well, because they start to realize where their skill set is, because we've started to push them a little bit more. Everything that we do in the advanced rider course is we try and make it very realism based. So it's all around things that we're going to see in crash work. If we're putting riders into a pattern and we're doing some sort of tight maneuver, we want it to be focusing on a certain skill that they're going to need when they're out there and that emergency happens. So generally we're working on body position, advanced clutch throttle control, our advanced turning technique, which works high speed and low speed, and getting them to have that advanced handling skills so that then they can also work on things like target fixation and fighting that target fixation phenomenon that's really, really common in motorcycle crashes. And as we work through those low speed handling skills, we eventually get into the second road day of the course, and we spend half of the day working on high-speed braking. But we want to tie things together and again make it realistic. So we want high-speed braking that puts some stress onto the riders, because at the end of the day we need riders to be able to perform these skills, but we also need them to perform them under stress. So we want to get some really good repetition doing the skill properly with a bit of stress involved there, braking. And then at the same time they're braking, they're also looking at where they want to go, because in the real world, when things all start to happen in front of you, you need to be able to multitask under stress. So we need the riders by the end of this course to be able to come in at high speed, do their great braking, downshifting, looking where they want the bike to go, and then be able to adjust themselves from that adrenaline rush that they get from that high speed stress braking and be able to control the bike with the fine low speed skills that we've taught them and work their way through a skilled pattern. And we change up that pattern every time they come down during the braking exercises so that they don't know what's coming. Every time they come down, they have to do that braking, they have that bit of stress, and then they have to move into that low speed handling skill and work through some new pattern that they haven't seen before to really tighten up and focus those skills that are going to keep them out of crashes. We see riders in crashes. Braking is a huge cause where riders don't brake properly. A lot of riders don't brake properly by not braking at all. And for those of us, when we're sitting around and we're talking about it, it seems crazy. How could a rider not brake properly? But it's a stress response where riders panic, and because they don't have enough practice at high-speed braking on their bikes, they freeze up and they do nothing, and they basically ride to the crash site. And I can't tell you how many riders I've stopped over the years and talked to them and said, well, you're doing, 40 kilometers over the speed limit and you're 50 feet behind that car. When was the last time you did emergency braking from the speed that you were just doing? And always the answer is, well, never. And I have to think, if you're going to ride at that speed, you're going to ride at any speed, don't you want to have practiced a skill that is going to be the difference between life or death? Because when something happens at that speed, if you can't get yourself out of it, you're in serious trouble. So we look at that, and then another phenomenon obviously is just using just the rear brake, which it doesn't take a whole lot to figure out on these bikes how majority of our braking is coming from the front brake. So we really want to train riders to use their front brake to its maximum potential. I'm a huge fan of technology on bikes. If I have a choice between picking a bike that has, ABS or has link braking, traction control, those are all great systems to have. But I also want to teach our riders how to not use those systems, because in most circumstances, our riders are going to be better and they're going to brake faster, and the bike's going to perform better for them if they have the skills to be able to do the things that they need to do without using those systems as a crutch. We talk about ABS. ABS is a system that's basically saying that the rider is not braking properly. They've locked the wheel, and so it's releasing the brakes and then putting them back on and saying, nope, still messed up. Releasing the brakes, putting them back on. And as that's going on, you're actually extending your braking in most riding conditions. And when we look at the speeds, if you think about, doing 60, 70, 80 kilometers an hour, if you come in and you just do a full emergency brake and you let your ABS take over, you're probably adding 8 to 10 feet of distance to your braking distance just by letting the ABS do the work. And that might not seem like a big idea until you're sitting on this side of the car at the end of your braking instead of laying on the road on the other side of the car. That 8 feet makes a big difference. So it's worthwhile for us to learn how to do it. And when we also remember that ABS, just like all these other systems, are a computer system, those of us who've all used computers understand that they don't always work properly, and we have seen bikes on police courses that have had full ABS failures. So knowing that if we learn how to do it properly, we're going to actually brake faster, and we take out the risk of the system not working properly, that's the best case scenario. And then we have that ABS in our back pocket for that day that we just mess up and we're not paying attention. It happens to all of us. You grab a mitt full of brake, ABS kicks in, and it saves you. Wonderful. But let's learn how to do it properly ourselves. And the same thing applies for other tech like traction control, linked braking. Linked braking is another great example of really a system that has been added on because riders didn't know how to brake properly and they were getting injured and killed. And manufacturers realized this, and when they looked at the crash stats that we were providing from reconstruction work, they realized that a huge percentage of riders were braking with only the back brake. And they realized that 60, 70, 80% of the braking on the bike was coming from the front wheel. So, riders are constantly, we go to crashes where they've lived and they've said, well, I don't know what happened, officer. I mean, I was on the brake and the bike just wasn't stopping, and we're looking at the distance that the bike traveled, and it's, wow, we do an inspection on the bike and realize, yep, only back brakes. The rider should have never been anywhere close to a crash, but they didn't. They were fearful of touching the front brake and they had no practice, and so they just didn't do it and they only got on the back. So manufacturers created link braking, and the idea in the beginning was, well, when they give it back brake only, the computer will kick in and give them some front brake, which in theory is kind of a good idea until they realize that some riders who know what they're doing, who are riding a bit more aggressively, might try and trail brake when they're in a corner, and then now the computer is giving them front brake, and that's causing suspension upset and causing some real problems for us when we're riding aggressively. And so that started to change, and those systems have gotten better and better. But again, we look at it from the point of view that if you just learn how to do it properly, you're going to be far better off. You don't need those systems. They're great to have in your back pocket for the day you screw up, but learn how to do it properly yourself. And that's really what this course is all about. It's taking riders, they've had the basic course, go and get those programs. When, if you're the rider that's out there that's thinking, I'm just going to go and get my license, go to the Canada Safety Council, Westside Academy, whoever it is out there. Take those basic courses. You can use their bike. They've got great instructors that can do stuff like that. We know tons of these guys all over the place, and we do lots of training for some of their instructors. A lot of them are just coming to us on their personal time because they want to develop their own skills and get better and better and better. And it doesn't change their program because they can't teach what we teach in the basic program because riders, you're just not ready for that yet. So get the basics, and once you feel like you've got the basics of that clutch, throttle control, and balance, then search out an advanced rider program. There really isn't much out there in terms of what we do. There are some other programs, some experienced rider programs and things like that. I'm a believer that any training is good training. Anytime you're out there on the bike and you're working on your skills, you're going to get better and better and better. And so all of those programs are great. I would never tell a rider, hey, I'm looking at this course, what do you think? I would say, hey, any course is good course. If you can't, make it to me or one of our courses, there's other courses out there, and they'll all provide you with good skills. What we do is incredibly unique. There's really nowhere else to get what we do unless you go and take the police course. And we offer a number of different courses now as we've developed over the years. I think this is year 14 for us, and we have instructors across Canada and down into California now, and we're looking at some new areas as we expand. But a big part of it for us is instructors and riders with police departments. We do training for their department, and they see the way that we train and the product that we're delivering. They realize when they've seen other programs that there really isn't anything else out there like what we teach. This is truly stuff that's going to keep riders out of crashes and make them safer, make them more confident. The side bonus is that you get to go into that parking lot and do that super tight U-turn inside 2 parking stalls and stop your bike, and you can do that slow race when you're riding with people. A lot of those skills you're not going to see every single day. The high-speed braking and the obstacle avoidance, those are things that are going to save you. But the other stuff is the fun stuff that you get to play with your friends. But the other parts of the course that we're teaching are the things that are really truly going to save you. These things have come from crash work for years and years and years, and it's something that we want to see spread. We really want to see more and more riders get this stuff. I always say every time we teach a course is 10 more riders that I don't have to go to a crash for. So it's very rewarding for us and for our instructors as we move across the country. We've got courses this year in London, Ontario, Edmonton, Victoria. We've got a new course that we're opening up in Vancouver, down in Ventura, California, Long Beach, California, San Diego, California, and we're looking at Halifax and Phoenix and Orlando to get some courses going down there. We've got a few overseas projects that we're looking at in Dubai and Portugal. So there's lots of opportunity as we continue to spread. If you're one of those riders, we've done lots of work with Harley-Davidson Hog and BMW MOA and Horizons Unlimited. Great programs and great groups that really support training and getting riders out there on the road, but getting them some really good skills to help them to make sure that they're safe and they can have fun when they're out there. So if you're with one of those groups or in the area that you're in, if you ride with people, if you're interested in trying to get an advanced rider course down in your area, feel free to email me. We work with groups, and we'll put on custom courses in your area. We'll fly in a couple of our instructors from different departments between Canada and the U.S., and we can put on a course in your area. And really it's about spreading the word and getting this advanced rider training out there. If you're out there and you have questions about our program, please email me and let me know. I'm happy to give you a call, and we'll do maybe some more of these videos so that people can get a little bit more of an idea of what it is that we do, and we'll just continue to spread. Thanks very much, guys. Have a good night.